Welcome back to Questions for the Rector. I'm Stephen Heiner, and with us for this series, as always, is the Rector of Most Holy Trinity Seminary in Reading, Pennsylvania, His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello.
So we have, I would say, an easier question to start out today. Thomas for $20. Thank you, Thomas. Are tattoos wrong? And what about religious tattoos, such as Bible verses or prayers?
Tattoos are wrong because they are a form of mutilation. You cannot mutilate your body in any way except for a proportionate reason. So with tattoos, if you had one small tattoo on your arm, that's so insignificant that I don't think it would make a difference. I wouldn't call that a sin. But if you tattoo yourself all over the place so that you become almost like a monster, I would say that it depends, where you draw the line, but it's certainly sinful and it could get to mortal sin.
So it doesn't mitigate it if you're getting a tattoo of Our Lady, Your Excellency?
No, that's entirely improper. You're not a canonized saint yet, and you should not be carrying around images of Our Lady on your body. See, so no, that's entirely improper. That gets into sacrilege and even blasphemy.
I think that's a pretty definitive answer there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Enim, 35 of a currency. Is that Guatemalan Quetzal?
I don't know.
It could be Quetzal, Your Excellency. This is the currency in Guatemala.
Uh-huh.
Given that Leo and the Novus Ordo bishops are not validly ordained, what would have to happen in order to have a true pope and hierarchy again? What are the steps?
Well, you would have to have a valid conclave, even if it's only a few cardinals that remain Catholic. And then he would have to consent to be ordained even and consecrated a bishop, and assuming that he had the intention of restoring Catholicism to the institutions of the Catholic Church, he would become thereby the Pope even before his consecration as a bishop, or even his ordination for that matter, as a priest. So that's why we consecrate bishops, in order to keep alive the episcopacy, the Catholic episcopacy, and valid orders.
Did His Excellency ever know or have anecdotes on Father Laguerre? He joined the seminary in 1973. I'm converting from Protestantism and I'm following his French catechism course.
Well, there's two Father Laguerres.
Well, who joined the seminary in 1973, I suppose?
Well, that's only 52 years ago or 53 years ago. I can't remember. They were brothers. I remember Philippe better than the other one. I can't remember his name. I think Philippe came first. And he was an ardent sedevacantist at Econ. But then he joined the Bon Pasteur, the Good Shepherd organization. From what I understand, now I have lost complete contact with him. He was always a very intelligent person and a very good seminarian when I knew him. See, and I was disappointed to see that he went that route.
So in the headlines, Your Excellency, we found out that a Jew was made the head of the Catholic Biblical Association.
Yeah, I saw that.
What did you make of that?
A Jewish woman, how unusual.
Not even a rabbi.
No, not even a rabbi. Well, first of all, the Catholic view of the Old Testament is that everything in it, as St. Jerome says, points to the New Testament. In other words, it is entirely ordered to the preparation of the chosen people for the reception of the Messiah. She doesn't believe that. How can she add anything of interpretation or any kind of comment to the Old Testament if she doesn't believe that fundamental thing? The New Testament is all about our Lord Jesus Christ as true God and true Messiah. She doesn't believe that. So what is she going to add to? How can she possibly comment a single sentence of sacred scripture?
Well, she's checking those DEI boxes, Your Excellency. Now she's a woman and she's a Jew. I think
Yeah.
you get extra points if it's a Jew as well. So I think,
So, I mean, it's just absurd. It means that that organization, in my opinion, is not to be considered seriously.
all right. Well, on the other end of the spectrum, we had a Novus Ordo governor in Massachusetts sign a new law to the thrill and excited claps from women who also like killing babies, allowing abortion up to the moment of delivery. Your Excellency, it's
Yes.
a moment of great joy for the state of Massachusetts.
Yes, they were all clapping. All the ladies were clapping. All I can think of is King Herod, the baby killer. I'd like to see it. My first comment was, will she get excommunicated? The SSPX gets excommunicated for holding on to tradition and saying the traditional Latin Mass. Oh, how terrible! But that you would authorize this woman who professes to be a Catholic. She has a nice Irish name, and that she could authorize the killing of babies that even exceeds in horror what already exists. There's a baby that is ready to be born, and that you can just kill that baby before it's born, or maybe even kill it after it's born. What's the difference? That she could remain in good standing in the Novus Ordo religion. I think that says so much. She is worse than King Herod, because more babies will die probably at her hands than at the hands of the horrid King Herod.
I'd hate to be at her particular judgment.
It should be called Queen Herod.
Heartland for $20. Thank you, Heartland. Very few saints are from the laity. What's wrong with us?
Well, the St. Thomas one, you have to get your head chopped off. There are a number. Some, for example, the lay helpers of the North American martyrs. There were 2 or 3 of them, I think. They got their heads chopped off. Martyrdom is usually the way. There are some, who. But again, marriage is not the way of perfection. The St. Paul says, don't get married unless it's really necessary. It's better not to marry, and he advises against it. So it puts you in a category of worrying about this world and having your mind on this world, and not necessarily in a bad way, but it's just not going to lead you to perfection. There are, for example, there's the King Edward Edward the Great, I think it is, or
Edward the Confessor.
Edward the Confessor, yes, who never touched his wife. Also, the King of Germany, the Emperor of Germany, Henry, he never touched his wife. See, those lay people who do make it to canonization usually abstain. St. Louis didn't touch his wife after he provided an heir. See, that's the way of perfection, to detach yourself from the things of this world, and the greatest possible detachment is in the category of chastity. See, so that's it is unfortunately not the way of perfection, and so it would be very difficult to actually become a saint in the married state. Very difficult. You have to effectively give up, either get martyred or else give up the pleasures of marriage in order to become more detached.
Jimmy Hungen for £10. We've now entered into the valid and licit part of the live stream.
Oh, wait a minute. Thank you for sending me the book about the history of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. I think he sent me that.
Oh,
it came from England anyway.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Anyway, what's his question?
Did you have a chance to look through the book yet?
Yes, I have, but I haven't read it yet. It's a long book, but there are some interesting things in it.
Oh, that's great. So thank you, Jimmy. In my St. Andrew Missal and prayer books of the 19th century, the Our Father has "Forgive them that trespass against us." Was those who trespass a pre-conciliar update or post?
No, those who trespass against us, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Yes, that I learned that as a child in the 1950s. So it's pre-conciliar, and I never saw any deviation from that. Now, in the 19th century England, perhaps it may have been a little different, but both are them that trespass against us. That's an older English It's perfectly understandable, but they're equivalent. So you could go either way on that.
Okay. We were sent a photo by a watcher, listener, Your Excellency, featuring Father Chad Ripperger holding an assault rifle or gun, however you want to refer to it, in front of an altar with a podcast host. I think the question, really, without getting into Father Ripperger, is this an appropriate photo for a priest to be taking?
Absolutely not. It is entirely improper. The canon law says that clergy should not bear arms, in other words, and that means should not be fighting in war and shooting at people in war. That's what that means. But the idea of actually showing armaments, I mean, priests might go hunting, so they might show like a 30-06 or something like that, but not in a picture. I mean, it's just something that is, if it were permissible, say like for hunting, you would do it privately, because it just doesn't go with all of the charity and mercy that pertains to the priesthood. It's that you have a gun, you're going to get somebody. It's entirely inappropriate. You would never see one of our clergy doing that. He would be gone the next day.
Well, yeah, just the thing is, we know clergy who know how to fire firearms and have used them, but they're not going to pose for a public photo like that. And I think
it's legitimate to if you live in especially a bad neighborhood or something, to have firearms to defend yourself. It's legitimate to go hunting and shoot animals with firearms. That's not against canon law. And but again, the gun, I mean, it's just in an inappropriate photograph, even if you have a serious reason to have one of those things.
There's certain deportment that's necessary for clerics, Your Excellency, and you're saying that this is opposed to that.
Yes, it shows aggression. That's the message.
Can you please clarify the Church's teaching on women wearing trousers? Is it always considered immodest, or are there circumstances where it can be morally acceptable for women to wear trousers on a daily basis?
Well, the church, meaning the authority of the church, never pronounced on it. So Merkelbach, the very famous moral theologian, said, some moralists say it's no sin, some say it's a venial sin. Modesty is another thing. You could be immodest in anything. So we're not talking about modesty. Obviously, if they're immodest, that's a whole other question. But if it's simply the question of pants or trousers, or whatever you want to call them, no, I don't think in today's context, I don't think it's sinful. But they were the symbol of 19th century feminism. Edna Bloomer. That's where you get the term bloomers. She was a radical leftist, and she went around in what was then pants. So they are the flag of feminism. And so for that reason, I would tell women, stay in your skirts, cut up your pants. All right.
All right. For those who are just now coming into the live stream, remember to hit the like button and let us know where you're watching or listening from. That sort of activity indicates to YouTube that this stream should be promoted, and it will push it out to subscribers of the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that as well. Your Excellency, a conclavist non-unicum priest in France is saying that the thesis is heretical. What simple arguments can we give to people that are not familiar with materialitaire and formalitaire?
First of all, it's not heretical unless you want to call St. Antoninus a heretic. Who lived in the 1400s. He talked about the matter and form of the papacy and so forth. They're not familiar with sacred theology. They're not familiar with the philosophy of authority. It is not a heresy. A heresy has to be something that is contrary to a revealed doctrine, which is taught by the Catholic Church, either by its ordinary universal magisterium or its solemn magisterium. This does not come under that. This is a theological explanation of what is going on today, and it stands on its own merits. Now, people may agree or disagree with it as they will, but it is, I mean, it's just absurd to say it's a heresy. It's not against anything that is revealed.
Jimmy, 120 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. You're most welcome, Your Excellency. As soon as I saw the volume, I thought that belongs at MHT.
That's right. We are in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia traditionally. In other words, before Vatican II, this was Philadelphia. So.
Speaking of Father Chad, does His Excellency think that exorcism and the demonic have become a substitute for spirituality in the Novus Ordo?
I don't know enough about what they're doing to comment on that. I really don't know. I just when I see them on the internet, I just pass over them. I just think they're not worth looking at. You know, I mean, so I just wish I had a better answer for him, but I'm a blank on that.
All right. How am I to act whilst at a Novus Ordo funeral or mass that I am under obligation to attend? Do I sit with my arms crossed and deliberately keep quiet and not respond?
Well, you have to give signs that you are not participating actively. You don't necessarily have to fold your arms, or typically you sit in the back so as not to draw attention, and you just sit through it as if watching a video. See, so, but you could do things like if the Protestant minister comes in and everybody stands up, you could stand up just to say, well, you know, he's an important person. That doesn't mean anything. You don't want to insult anybody, but you can't give any sign of active participation in the what's going on at their altar or their sanctuary, or whatever it is. So you just sit there and think of watching a video. You just sit there, and typically in the back of the church. But you could sit in the front. That, you know, where you sit doesn't matter too much. It's what you're doing and not doing that it gives the indication that you are not participating actively.
Okay. Should Catholics avoid modern popular music at a wedding reception, even though it is separate from the wedding ceremony? If so, what principles should guide the selection of music? Is the standard simply to avoid songs with immoral or inappropriate lyrics, or should Catholics also avoid music that promotes a worldly atmosphere, even if the lyrics are clean?
Well, I'll tell you what our rules are. Unless you promise not to have rock music at your reception, we will not do a mass. In other words, we will only marry you in a simple ceremony. See, so that's, but we will not do a nuptial mass. Obviously, all music that is suggestive in any way of impurity must be eliminated. Music, you know, as far as it's somewhat subjective. It is what constitutes popular music, etc. I would say rock music is from the devil, so I would exclude that if you're asking me. If you're coming to me to get married, rock music, it's from hell. All right. So, but, you know, popular songs, or, you know, like Perry Como, or, you know, the old crooners or something, you know, I don't know what people like. I don't know what they mean again by popular music. You see, is there some popular music that does not offend morality?
Yes, but I think they would offend Bishop Sanborn's musical sensibilities, I think. But that's not relevant, I think. What you're saying is...
Yeah, I mean, you know, anything that is not Mozart or Bach, I get uncomfortable with. So, but I'm not imposing that on everybody.
Right. So I think your basic standard that you're articulating is no rock music.
No rock music and
nothing
no
like that.
Lewd music. In other words, nothing that is suggestive of impurity. See.
Robert Vaughn for $5. Thank you, Robert. What advice do you give to someone who is struggling with scrupulosity?
You must choose a good and experienced confessor, perhaps somebody who's a little older, and obey him and do exactly what he says. The scrupulous person is always fearful of having sinned and cannot ever get his mind clear and straight about whether he sinned or not. The general principle for scrupulous people is this, that unless you are absolutely certain that you committed a sin, you presume that you did not. All right. So that should, you know, am I absolutely certain I did this? If you can say, no, I'm not absolutely certain, then you forget about it. All right. That's and so, but you have to, follow the advice of somebody who's an experienced confessor. That's very good. But that's what he's going to tell you to do. But they come in and again, they're troubled, and sometimes they'll talk to the priest in confessional for a half an hour about I don't know, and he's going to stop you and say, this is your principle, and your doubts are unfounded, and you have to go by this principle. So that's what he should do.
So consulting with a priest on a regular basis on that, and hopefully it will
an experienced priest, not one that's just out of the seminary necessarily.
Heartland for $20. Thank you, Heartland. In the canon of the Mass, we pray for all who are Orthodox in belief and who profess the Catholic and Apostolic faith. Who are we praying for or not praying for?
You're praying for all Catholics. You're praying for all who are members of the Catholic Church.
So I think this has come up before. You're actually people asking, do you consider Novus Ordites members of the Catholic Church?
I would say objectively, no. They are. I would say the Novus Ordo is a new religion that contradicts the traditional faith. They are publicly adhering to a false religion. Objectively, no. I think many of them are in good conscience, but many are not in good conscience. If you go into error or even heresy in good conscience, that meaning that you don't realize it's heresy, then you remain a Catholic. If you profess heresy or believe heretical things, knowing that this is different from what the church taught in the past, then you are a formal heretic. So to make a blanket statement about all Novus Ordites, I would say objectively they are not Catholics, but individually some might be in good conscience, which would not put them outside of the church.
Someone had asked for His Excellency to itemize heresies from Vatican II in every episode. Just as a note, that's not going to happen. But if you'd like to know a bit more,
5 hours, maybe not.
Well, we have entire episodes dedicated to the documents of Vatican II. I think His Excellency's done 3 or 4 of those already. You can find them on this channel, the MHT Seminary channel.
Yes, and also our website. There's a lot. As a matter of fact, something is going up pretty soon, and that is a double column on I think it's religious liberty.
Okay. So yes, actually maybe I'm wrong. It's not on this channel. It's on the Roman Catholic Media channel, but you'll find that there's episodes in which His Excellency is going through the document and he's highlighting things. So can't really do that on these live streams, but if you'd like to go deeper, there's at least 5 or 6 hours worth of His Excellency talking about that, and they'll be added to as we go through more documents.
I did a series of sermons way back.
Yes.
On the errors of Vatican II. Yeah.
Yes, and that's been linked in other parts. If someone knows where those are and has a moment and wants to put them in the chat, that would be appreciated. Mm-hmm. Robert, again, following up, $5. Thank you, Robert. What exactly is the sin of superstition? Is knocking on wood a sin? Thank you.
A superstition is to assign to something purely natural a supernatural causality, or meaning that it can help you to do something, or it can keep something away from you, or for example, knocking on wood. Yes, that's superstitious. I wouldn't call it a mortal sin, unless you did it with a very, very evil intention. That you're believing in witchcraft or something like that. But typically, people say that because something went well. Yes, any kind of that reading your astrology, that what the stars, whether you're an Aquarius or this or that, that's all superstition. The fact that you did well at Las Vegas or something like that means you're going to have a good day, or some sort of stupid thing like that.
A black cat crossing your path, or walking underneath a ladder.
Yes, and that's all superstition. It's sinful. It could be a mortal sin, depending on the seriousness of it. I would say the way it is popularly, considered, then I would say probably venial.
All right. Are pregnant women bound to abstain on Fridays?
They're not bound to the fast, but they might be bound to the abstinence on Fridays unless for some reason, and all they would need is a serious reason why they can't. And they could ask a priest about it, but it's what we call a positive law, and a positive law does not oblige in a serious inconvenience. So if, she needs it, she needs to eat meat, fine. That's perfectly in accordance with the law. Like people in the war, the church dispensed all of Europe from the Friday abstinence during the war because there was rationing and all that stuff. So in individual cases, you could have a reason why. For example, on ships going over to Europe, it was dispensed because that was the only food available. See, so the church is not an ogre.
Can you please clarify if the SSPV consider Bishop Sanborn an actual bishop, since they may or may not accept the Took line bishops?
No, they they do
Well, I
not.
was going to say, your excellency, it depends, actually, right? So I'm thinking of your visit. I'm thinking of your visit with Father Selway.
Yes, I went to a funeral of Bishop Selway's grandmother back in 2010, and the nuns there made a very how would you say, special effort to call me Father Sanborn. Yet they called Father Selway Father. And if I'm only Father, then he's nobody. He's just
no, he's Joey Selway, right?
Yes, he's just Joey Selway. You see, so that was an inconsistency. They were calling him Father all over the place. So but they have this. They're dug in that way. Bishop Kelly pronounced on that. That's it, and they will not listen to all of the very, very convincing evidence that their objections are false.
It's a form of TDS, Your Excellency, Took derangement syndrome.
Yes, pretty much it is. Yes,
they don't have an ability to really.
One of their nuns recently was down in Florida, but she would not visit the chapel because they're not allowed to genuflect. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
All right, Jimmy, upping his game 50 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. As His Excellency, keep moving towards 100.
Yeah, we have to bid him up.
In one of the recent synodal documents issuing from the Vatican, they state that scripture has to be contextualized so as to recognize the love between the alphabet people. Doesn't this express that their canon law is a dead letter?
Their whole religion is a dead letter. Well, first of all, it doesn't. That just means that you change the sense of sacred scripture in order to approve of things that are grossly immoral. That's the translation of that. All right. Their canon law, really has nothing to do with canon law. That's doctrine. That's sacred scripture. So it doesn't touch on canon law, but there's nothing in the Novus Ordo that is any good whatsoever. The whole thing is a dead letter.
If you are just now coming to the stream, remember to hit the like button and let us know where you are watching or listening from if you haven't already done so. Yesterday, I watched a new video published by Bishop Sanborn, and what's happening over the summer, Your Excellency, is there are clips taken from 2023 and 2024 videos that are coming out that are shorter. Mm-hmm. He mentioned that if couples are invalidly married, including divorce or remarriage or marriage outside the church, we should neither invite them together to our homes nor attend family gatherings if they are invited. I'm wondering how this should be applied in my case. I am 24 and living with my grandmother, who is Novus Ordo. Most of my relatives have been baptized in the Novus Ordo, but have left the faith altogether. A significant percentage of my close relatives are therefore in invalid marriages. Even my own siblings are unfortunately heading down this path. Is it necessary for me to miss all family gatherings if these invalidly married couples are invited? The problem is that I am emotionally and economically dependent upon my family. Making this choice would effectively require me to cut them off, which is nearly impossible since I have neither financial, medical, or emotional independence to do so.
When you say they're invalidly married, Novus Ordo If they've been married in the Novus Ordo, that is a valid marriage because they are doing it or considering it to be a Catholic marriage. In other words, don't forget that the spouses are the ones that actually confer the sacrament. So they are going to the Novus Ordo as perceived as the Catholic faith. So they may not be invalidly married. You see, but
but in the worst case scenario, if they're leaving the faith and being married even outside of the Novus Ordo, should she be expected to?
Well, let me continue. That rule is in effect unless you have a serious reason whereby you need to see them. All right. Because it turns on the question of consent, which is the participation in somebody's sin. All right, by consent. So if you said, I robbed a bank today, and I said, great, I hope you got a lot of money. See, I am associating myself with your sin. I am giving approval. That is known as cooperation in sin. So to give social acceptance to people who are not socially acceptable is a sin. See, they're not true couples. They are living in sin. That's a sin. And so you have to avoid that. But if you have a serious reason, see, then you're not any reasonable person who knew the serious reason would say, well, he has a reason to be there. Like business, for example, who knows? You have to invite people to business meetings that are, living in horrible sin and so forth. So this person would have a serious reason from what he or she is describing. So not to worry.
What should a Catholic do if he is visiting family or friends and without his prior knowledge, a couple living in concubinage happens to also be at this gathering?
Again, you might have a serious reason there to stay so as to not cause a lot of trouble and anguish, etc. But I would say this, that if you have a lot of that in your family, you would want to know beforehand who is going to be there. See, and and if somebody invalidly married or living in sin is going to be there, then you don't go, unless there's again a serious reason why you need to go.
A very particular question here. A friend of mine in Ontario, Canada, only attends a Latin Mass that is una cum, celebrated by a Byzantine priest with bi-ritual faculties from the local diocese. Is this okay?
I would say no, because the Byzantines are very much into the Novus Ordo in the sense of their theology and everything else. I mean, they're not a refuge. And una cum, you got the same problem, that they're expressing union with a heresiarch and a false pontiff, which is objectively schismatic.
Watching from upstate New York, I was in a cone with Bishop Sanborn, somebody named Rodney Rickard.
Oh, yes. Oh, horse something. I know where he was from. No, that's somebody else. I know the town he was from. It was near Albany. And yes, I remember him very, very well. Hello. Yeah, it was a long time ago. Rodney Rickard. Yes. What was the town that he was from?
It'll come to you, Your Excellency.
Yes, that's a long way, but I do remember it very well.
Well, I think I sent you a picture from Icone earlier this week, and you said that was from 100 years ago.
Yes, I know. That was when I was thin and had hair and
right, different colored hair,
didn't have wrinkles and whatnot.
Nildadel for $10. Thank you, Nildadel. If you have a question, put it in the chat and I'll do my best to pose it to His Excellency. Jimmy, 10 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. I've always been a supporter of the Gothic in terms of church architecture or chalices or thuribles, as opposed to the Baroque. Does His Excellency have a preference?
I love both of them, but for different reasons. The Gothic, I think, is the more noble in this sense, that my theory is the Gothic lifts you up. The Baroque, it lifts you up to heaven. The Baroque takes heaven and brings it down to you. You see? So you don't see angels, with big wings and everything in the Gothic. You walk into a Gothic cathedral and it is geometric. It's perfection. It's everything about it is right. and it's very vertical, as far as it's another world, and so I think as far as the accomplishment of the liturgical, how would you say, atmosphere, I think the Gothic is superior for that reason. But I walk into a Baroque church and it sure is really nice. It shows the majesty of God as best as we can do it. It shows them the glory of heaven, which is legitimate as well. You see, so. But Baroque has occasionally a tendency to go overboard and get ugly, actually.
Do you have any Baroque chalices in your collection, Your Excellency?
No, I have plenty of Baroque chalices, and I have plenty of Gothic chalices.
So he's an equal opportunity buyer when it comes to.
I see both sides.
LDP for $5. Thank you, Luke. Is there any truth to the legend that George Washington converted to Catholicism before his death?
No, I think that's an apocryphal legend or fairy tale. No, there's none that I know of.
You'd put it up there with the cherry tree, Your Excellency?
Yeah, the cherry tree and all the other things. He was a Grand Master Freemason.
Someone from a place where they use pounds, so £5, thank you. What would you say about marriages in which one of the spouses is not Catholic, but is rooted in natural law or family tradition?
Well, what are they? Are they? We don't do mixed marriages. There is such a great danger that the faith of the children will be compromised, or the faith of the Catholic spouse will be compromised, that we just don't do them. So I would say that should be avoided.
LP for $30. Thank you, LP. On superstition, how does one separate the natural and supernatural in everyday life without reading too much into things, but simultaneously accepting divine providence? Coming from the Novus Ordo, it seems very easy to conflate the two.
On superstition, how does one separate the natural? Well, the supernatural is, unless you're seeing miracles, which is very unusual, the supernatural in you is sanctifying grace and actual grace. So
I think this might be an example. Might be, Your Excellency, I get into a car accident or I lose my cell phone, and is the idea that our Lord is trying to say something to me through those things, or is it something that is natural? I think maybe that's where the person is going with this question.
There's no barometer. There's no there's no little device that you can tell. I mean, everything that happens to you is by divine providence. That is certain. Nothing in the whole world. A mosquito cannot flap its wings without the consent of God and by the pre-motion of God. Everything that moves, it moves by divine will and force. All right. And so that's a general principle. So there's nothing that happens to you that is not divine providence. All right. And the question is, how do you read it? In other words, is this done for my humiliation? Is this done for my punishment? Those you want to ask a priest, perhaps. But you're not going to get it unless you get an angel from heaven telling you. It's going to be essentially a good guess.
So, someone in response to your comment about funerals and cremation sent us some prices, Your Excellency, which I found interesting. I made contact with Anderson Funeral Home in Beaufort, South Carolina. No perpetual care is offered at their on-site cemetery, but for obvious business reasons, it is well kept. The deed for a burial plot is $2,000, and the associated cost of interment, basic steel casket, opening grave, closing grave, is approximately $8,300 with a prepayment plan. And this plan can be obtained via a funeral insurance policy that guarantees the set price. Visitation, flowers, casket upgrade, clothing, obituary write-up, headstone, staff services, chairs, and graveside services are extras. Cremation is $4,000.
Well, cremation is condemned by the Roman Catholic Church, except in cases of plague and war. And even there, it's restricted.
Those prices do not seem outrageous, Your Excellency. I mean, even
not by today's
Yeah.
In 2013, I spent $12,000 on my mother's funeral.
It's something, as you said, you need to have provided for, and more importantly, the funeral arrangements, and then having masses said for you. That's something you've continued to say needs to be taken.
Yes, what's much more important is the masses. I mean, the rest of it is for the living, and they're just going to forget about it after a few days. And the soul that might be detained in purgatory is what you should concentrate on. So you don't have to necessarily go through all of those things in order to bury somebody. You can bury somebody pretty cheaply, you might say, inexpensively. I wouldn't get too attached to those things. My mother wanted to be buried in New York. She died in Florida. That's why it would cost so much money, because she had to go.
You had to move the body. I'm watching from Bayside, New York. I've been learning
right next to Flushing, Auburndale. I'm from Auburndale. You would know exactly where that is.
I've been learning my faith through His Excellency. God bless you both. What is His Excellency's opinion on Pope Pius VII? Well, how much time do you have?
Well, he was elected again in reaction to Pius VI, who roundly condemned the principles of the French Revolution. Pius VII's family and he himself was of a liberal bent in that time, making peace with the revolution. He actually took down the canopy above his throne in the cathedral when he was the bishop of Imola, I think. And in order to show that the church is more democratic, and that we're taking down the thrones, and so he was elected as a person to make peace with the French Revolution, which was overrunning Europe. So in that sense, I don't have a high opinion of him. He also did the Concordat in 1801 with Napoleon, which I disagree with. That's a very hotly discussed issue in France, but I am on the no side on that. But so he made various concessions to Napoleon, but some things he held the line on. He was persecuted by Napoleon because he didn't make enough concessions. Finally, Napoleon took him to Fontainebleau, which was his palace, and browbeat him. Some say he physically beat him into giving Napoleon the ability to invest bishops. That means to give them power. Not only could he present the nominations to the Pope, but he could actually install them. You are the bishop of so-and-so. And he gave in on that to Napoleon. And the cardinals came to him and said, you really made a big mistake. And so he rescinded it the next day. You see, so his whole idea was somehow we have to live with the revolution. And I think that was a mistake. I think the revolution was from the devil, and that the church had to take the same attitude toward it that it took toward Roman paganism and that a new age of martyrs. And there were many martyrs of the French Revolution, but I think that the church had to take a strong stand. I also think that he reigned for 20-some years, 22 years, I believe. And I think that set up the idea of liberal Catholicism in France, that we can somehow get along with the revolution. Look at Pius VII, so France became a hotbed of liberal Catholicism, and afterwards of modernism, more than any other country, France. So I think that he gave that idea of baptizing the revolution and getting along with the revolution, gave rise to that. That's my opinion. I've done a good deal of reading on it, though. So.
Might I say, just slightly in Pius VII's defense, His Excellency, that His Holiness did resist the continental system, which had England look favorably on the Vatican, which then led to the restoration of the hierarchy in England.
Yes, and also to the credit of England, they took in 5,000 emigre priests from France during the Revolution, and they all were living in England. And that was one of the things that softened the English with regard to Catholicism. And also Pius VII thanked them very much for receiving all of those priests into England. And so he said, I'm not going to close my ports to the English who have been so decent to us.
Mm.
Not everything he did was bad. He did some wonderful things, and he.
I would also add, Your Excellency, as a lover of the Jesuits, he did restore the Jesuit
He
order.
restored the Jesuits. He also criticized the Constitution of France in 1814 for its religious liberty clause, and he was very upset about that. See, so I mean, he's what you might call a mixed bag. He did some great things, and he was very heroic in his resistance in many ways. And it's just that he had, in all good conscience, I'm sure, this idea that somehow we have to get along. He wanted to preserve Catholicism in France, in revolutionary France, and he thought this was the best way to do it.
It's as I say, how much time do you have? His Excellency could opine on that subject for a while.
Yeah, I do a lot of church history reading.
That was the express version.
Yeah.
Michael, for £10. Thank you, Michael. Could His Excellency explain the Novus Ordo no longer referring to the episcopacy as a degree of the priesthood, instead as the last holy order, as is seen in pre-conciliar catechisms?
What is no longer referring to the episcopacy as a degree of the priesthood? The way they see bishops is as participants in the government of the church, and not merely, in other words, that's the collegiality. So the new rite of consecration does not talk about the fullness of the priesthood as the old rite of consecration did, but rather the jurisdiction that they're receiving. So it's an elevation to jurisdiction, having nothing to do with the power of orders. See, that's the new way. So I don't know if I'm responding to his question. In the traditional, there is very clearly in the rite, and the essential form is the fullness of the priesthood. See, so that means they can ordain, they can consecrate, they can confirm. All right, so it's because of they have changed the notion of the episcopacy, and that's collegiality.
So we're going to insert a shameless plug for the sisters here, Your Excellency. The sisters have a new CD, Lumen Chants for Meditation, available for pre-order. All of their CDs are worth getting. Angela, if you can put a link in the chat, other people can find out about it. Some of the young people might be confused by what a CD is, Your Excellency. I don't know.
That's all I have. A compact disc. See, I know that.
A funeral question, Your Excellency. In the old rite, the casket is covered with a black cloth, and the priest circles the casket and bows to the west. What does that mean?
No, he let's see. No, he goes around and then he bows toward the altar. He doesn't bow toward the west. He bows toward the altar. If the altar is west, then it's west. But he bows toward the altar and then comes around the other way and then says some more prayers at where the feet of the deceased person is, unless it's a priest, and then it's the head. But that's the rite in the traditional rite.
How should I respond when a Novus Ordite asks me what religion I practice?
You say Roman Catholicism.
And they'll say, well, that's what I practice.
And then you say, no, it isn't, because it's a new religion. And then you point out to him how it's a new religion.
Okay. How do we know if we are truly sorry for our sins?
Mostly by your sincerity of purpose of amendment. In other words, it's one thing to say, I'm sorry. Like, say you're a kid and you throw a rock through the neighbor's window and you say, oh, I'm sorry. And the neighbor says, oh, that's okay. And then you go to the next window and throw a rock through it. You see, you're not really sorry. The true test of sorrow is what we call purpose of amendment, that you take all of the steps necessary never to do that again, and you firmly resolve not to do it again. See, and so you would have to, a confessor would have to question the sincerity of someone's sorrow if he's falling into a sin over and over and over again. See, so.
Is the Chaplet of the Seven Sorrows the same as the Rosary?
No, that's a separate chaplet. In other words, it's a small rosary, and it has its merit to say that, especially during Lent or Passion Tide, but it's an approved thing to do.
I don't think people realize actually there's dozens of chaplets that are available depending on what your devotions are.
Yeah, that's probably the most popular one, though.
Heartland for $5. Thank you, Heartland. Is it a positive step that a Novus Ordo church was permitted to have a communion rail at the Divine Mercy Shrine in Stockbridge, Massachusetts?
No, because they're kneeling down in front of bread. No, that's just a concession. No, you have to have the restoration of the faith, not just the restoration of liturgy. In my most recent newsletter, I point out that liturgy is a reflection, like a mirror image of the dogma of the Catholic Church. If the dogma is not there, then there's nothing in the mirror. In other words, it's just a sham. It's an illusion. So to say, well, we're getting the Latin Mass, or we're getting this or that, some sort of progress, it is nothing without the abandonment of the Novus Ordo doctrines and the restoration of Catholic doctrine in those buildings.
User for £10. Thank you, user. Could the fact that the Orthodox do not rely on a central authority have contributed to stronger attachment to apostolic tradition than Novus Ordites? Thinking of Mount Athos versus the Synodal Church.
Yes, I would say that's true, that they have a deep notion of antiquity and adherence to what went before. They're still using the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. That's 5th century. They have a very, I was just talking to my barber yesterday, who is Greek Orthodox, and he said, I've been fasting for 2 weeks. And I said, why? Well, he said, what's Saturday for you? Meaning how? I said, it's the Assumption of Our Lady. He said, for us too. That's the biggest feast in Greek Orthodoxy. 2 weeks. And I said to myself, that proves the antiquity of that belief. That shows that they too, despite the fact that they split from Rome, that they have that antique and very old belief in the Assumption of Our Blessed Lady, which is the basis of the definition, because it's not in sacred scripture. So it's in tradition. So yes, to answer the question, they are attached to traditions very much. I mean, that doesn't absolve them of their schism, but it does at least, it would dispose them to returning to the true faith. I would say that.
And they have historically on numerous occasions. They have. It's just a question of maintaining it after they go home. Yes. You didn't tell your barber about Karl Rahner and the Assumption, did you, Your Excellency?
No, that was Hans Kung.
He said,
the Assumption is an assumption. I heard him say it on television.
As I said, it'd be horrifying to be at his particular judgment.
He died. Yeah, it's all done and said.
Jimmy Hundred gets us to £100, Your Excellency.
Hey.
Thank you, Jimmy. I heard from a friend that the SSPV clergy simply claimed that Bishop Kelly found problems in Europe, then handed over the details to Father Jenkins. And Father Jenkins last discussed this. The crux of his argument appeared to be that there were cats walking on the altar of Took.
Well, this would take me a long time to answer. No. What Bishop
cats don't invalidate, Your Excellency?
No, they don't. What Bishop Kelly found objectionable was that one of the laymen that was attesting to the consecration confused a pontifical with a ritual. And he based his whole argument on that because he was using something, actually a false principle. See, the principle concerning validity of sacraments is that if a trained person, such as a priest or a bishop, does a sacrament, it is presumed valid unless there is evidence to the contrary. If an untrained person does it, such as a nurse in a hospital, say a baby that's born, then the priest must ask the person, did you do it right? And describe what she did and so forth. That's the rule. But Bishop Kelly just cooked up this principle that people have to be watching to make sure it's valid. And it's not true. I mean, baptisms are done by priests without people watching and don't know what the rite is or anything like that. But he cooked that up. I remember all this, personally. So that's those were the and then the other German witness that we saw later on the day took the pontifical and put it in my hand and Father Kelly's hand. He said, "This is the book that he used for this." So it was just a mistake on the part of the one witness, But who is there? You have Bishop Gerard de Laurier, who is such a prominent theologian, taught at the Lateran University in Rome, and was an advisor to Pope Pius XII on the doctrine of the Assumption. All right. Then you have Archbishop Tuck, who also was educated in Rome and who spoke Latin, even though he was Vietnamese, and wrote Latin perfectly. Between those two, one of them would not know how to do a consecration. And as Father Cicada says, all it is 2 hands and a 16-word formula. That's all you need. That between those two, they could not do it correctly. You couldn't find perhaps 2 more educated people. That's why Bishop de Castro Meyer said, "I have no problem with it whatsoever. If it's valid for Gerard, it's valid for me." And I think he had the common sense to understand that. You could, if you have somebody that who was a bishop for years. I think he was appointed by Pius XI for years in Vietnam, and probably did many consecrations because he had the permission to do them without apostolic mandate. Just find somebody that's correct, and do it. And then this theologian, this eminent theologian, who would have been able, to discern anything wrong. Those 2 cannot come up with a valid consecration. I mean, it's just absurd. I'm just so. But it has nothing to if a cat jumps up on the altar. It's not. It's come on.
And as usual, a cat is going to try to be the center of attention anyway.
Yes. So they're excused. But no, they were grasping at straws and cooking up principles that just were not true. And we disproved all of that stuff. And
Esteban de la Santa Cruz, $5. Thank you, Esteban. Is there any good list that cites the errors in Vatican II documents, or are there any articles made by Institute clergy on this matter?
Well, we have written a lot. We have a lot up on our website. We're just about to put up another one, a double column on religious liberty. So I just can't remember what's on our website. See, I don't obviously go to that too much.
You don't need to check what's up there. Well, Esteban, I would go through, as His Excellency, go to the articles list on the mhtseminary.org website and see what you have there. And if there's plenty to read. So I would maybe start with that. There's also the thesis.us if you want to read more. And I would refer you to the Roman Catholic Media YouTube channel, where His Excellency has done, I think, 4 episodes so far on the documents of Vatican II. And there'll be more coming later this year. We're on a bit of a summer break as regards to those episodes. But I think that's a good place to start. You could start with those episodes His Excellency's already done. So for those who have just come into the stream, I can see the numbers of people in the stream. So I know there's some of you who've come in since I last made this announcement. Please remember to hit the like button. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. That way you'll be notified through YouTube when these streams go live. And let us know in the chat by commenting where you are watching or listening from. Patrick Martin at $10. Thank you, Patrick. Could His Excellency explain Jansenism if he's familiar with it? I purchased Pensées by Blaise Pascal without realizing it was on the index.
Jansenism was known as Catholic Protestantism, Catholic Calvinism. It's Calvinism, that's all it is. And that is that we need grace, actual grace, in order to be naturally good. See, that grace is due to us in order to that we just otherwise it's not gratuitous. It's not something that God grants to us gratuitously. It's something that we deserve and we need in order just to act normally. That's the fundamental error of Jansenism. It's Calvinism, and they use Catholic ritual, and they. You walk in, you think this is a Catholic church, but it was full of Calvinism.
And what should Patrick do with his copy of Pensées?
Throw it in the garbage. It's actually a mortal sin to read a book that's on the index, unless you had permission from the local bishop.
If the Novus Order were to give up control of every Catholic church building that it holds tonight, could you conduct the Mass in these churches, or are they defiled?
The use of a church for a false religion would defile them, but you could reconcile them fairly easily, you know.
Chemius for €5. Thank you, Chemius. How specific do we need to be when confessing? Can I say I was lazy, or I was lazy in these ways, or in these specific situations I did this?
You're not obliged to give all of the circumstances of a sin. You're not even, for first of all, venial sins. You can say I was lazy. You may mention the number of times. You're not required to mention the number of times. You're not required to mention circumstances unless the circumstance would change the morality of it. See, so I was insulting to my next door neighbor is not as bad as being insulting, say, to a priest. See, so the circumstance would change that. Now, usually insults could be mortal, easily mortal, but the rule, you're not even strictly obliged to confess venial sins, but it is very good to do so. All right. So, but for mortal sins, they have to be according to their species and number. That means how many times and exactly what you did. In other words, all the circumstances, and you can't just say, as some say, I've been bad. Sometimes you get that from kids, you know. Bless you, Father, for I have sinned. I've been bad. Well, how have you been bad? You know.
Right.
So, or some people might be lax about how many times. You know, well, you know, once in a while. You know, you have to figure out as best you can, to the best of your ability, how many times you did something if it's a mortal sin. And any circumstances, for example, if there was scandal given or other things that might affect the gravity of the sin.
Someone's shocked to see that there's a Rolodex, Your Excellency. He didn't.
Yes, they used to have I just looked up to see if they had it. There used to be a great little machine for your desk, an electronic Rolodex. And it was perfect. And then they did away with them. Now you're supposed to get your computer going to go find somebody's address.
Right.
That's very, very useful.
I think I'm realizing that this is serving a sort of museum curatorial function there, that people are seeing these objects on your desk and wondering what they might be. £10 from Jimmy Hunter. Thank you, Jimmy. The Church of England also have communion rails and wonderfully decorated cushions in the pews. They're in great condition since most Anglicans only kneel to tie their shoes.
Yes, well said. Yes, as Father Chicano said, you know, great music and no confession.
No confession. LP for $25. Thank you, LP. What is the minimum or maximum time of courtship? Does age play a factor? A young woman's husband gave her 2 months from meeting to decide on marriage or was going to walk. She wanted to go slower. Is that a man leading or a red flag?
That's a red flag. Don't marry that man.
It's too late. It sounds like she was already married. But you're saying that that's not a man leading.
Yes. Well, first of all, courtship can be an occasion of sin, so it should not go on for much more. I mean, since too long, I should say. As a matter of fact, the limit on engagement, which is yet a greater occasion of sin, it's a necessary one, but it's considered an occasion of sin, is 6 months. All right. So, but courtyard is hard to put a courtyard. Courtship, the place where you stay. Courtship is, you have to see if you're compatible, you know, and that might take a long time or a short time, but I think longer is better than shorter because of infatuation. You can easily become infatuated with somebody, and that blows away like the leaves on the trees in the fall. I mean, that after, I always tell newlyweds that year one is going to be nuclear war. Just so you know, because there's a lot of adjustment that has to be made to living with somebody else. And so infatuation goes away very, very quickly. You have to be very comfortable about the adjustments that you have to make to live with this other person. Then you're ready to marry. You see, but if you haven't been through that and you want to test a lot before you marriage is forever, and until death do us part, and could last a long time. You know?
Your Excellency, I've heard that women, especially peasant women, worked in the medieval ages alongside their men to feed their families. Would this have been the traditional way?
Well, in the medieval times, they were farmers, and probably the women went out and helped to pull the carrots out of the soil. In other words, it's not as if they went into the city, on the train and worked in an office while there was a great deal of agriculture. There was some work in the handiwork like shoemakers and whatnot in the towns, but I mean, there was no big industry and factories or anything like that, or business. It was all agricultural at the time. So I just don't think that the question applies, you see.
Well, also, you see, it's what you're referring to, harvest. Everybody works at harvest time.
Yes.
It is a very intensive thing. It's 18 hours. It's still to this day, if you know farming families, it's a big deal. But it's untrue to say that they worked alongside as though they were men, because they had to prepare the food.
Yes,
so
they did.
You pick your
children, and there would be many children normally, no birth control or anything like that. So, but they were there. I mean, they were still part of the household, even no matter where they were working, in the house or outside of the house. Or, I mean, even today, people typically women will do some growing of vegetables in their backyard, and that's nothing wrong with that.
So I would just push back on the idea that they were working in the same way that the men were working. There were certainly times that they assisted in the fields, but it's not traditional to say that they were, you could say, working. I always laugh to think of His Excellency saying, "What if Our Lady responded to the angel by saying, 'No, I want to have a career in Jerusalem. I want to go get a job.'"
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. This idea that obviously women do labor, but not in the same way that men do.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Plash, $5. Thank you, Anthony. Does the Vatican II document on religious liberty contradict the syllabus of errors?
It contradicts Quanta Cura and Mirari Vos, the first of Pius IX, the other of Gregory XVI. Also, document Pius XII. I'm not sure. Yes, it does contradict a syllabus of errors. It's true. Yes.
He has a follow-up also for $5. Thank you. Is the 1964 film Becket a good portrayal of the life of St. Thomas of Becket?
I don't think so. It shows Becket as sort of a loose-living person. And who was that? Richard and what was
Peter O'Toole was the king.
Richard Burton, I think, was Becket.
Richard Burton, yeah.
And when you get Richard Burton in anything, no, I never cared for that film. There are some good parts of it. The excommunication scene is wonderful, I would say.
Pretty much textbook, yes.
Also, the martyrdom scene I thought was good, but there are parts of the beginning of it that I thought were improper,
objectionable. I don't think that children could watch those parts.
No, I don't think it would scandalize an adult, but so.
Huta Ona name for €12. Thank you.
Heute ohne Name, today without a name.
Okay.
Das ist Deutsch.
All right. Well, thankfully, His Excellency can save the day with the correct pronunciation there. Watching live from Vienna. Thank you for all you do, and God bless.
Dankeschön.
Thank you for your generosity. Jimmy Hunchin, £20. Thank you, Jimmy. When is the moment during the Mass that one places a cloth over the communion rail? I ask because the preconciliar rule in England was for communicants to approach the rail at the third ringing of the Domini non sum dignus bell.
Well, that's the communion cloth. The communion cloth, the authors say it's still in vigor, but you see, in the 1920s, Pius XI instituted the communion paten. That is what the altar boy holds under your chin, which in a way made the communion cloth irrelevant, because the whole purpose, I saw commentary in one book. How does the communion cloth protect the priest is writing it in, protect the Blessed Sacrament? because the only thing it would do is catch it from, say, going beyond the communion rail or something like that. It might catch it, but so you could, because you would take it and hold your hands underneath it. But that is done shortly, probably after the Agnus Dei, shortly before Holy Communion. But as far as approaching the rail, that would be up to the local pastor or the diocesan bishop, local custom. But people should be on their knees for the Domine non sum dignus when the priest holds up. So they should be ready at that point. But again, it's local custom. There's no law about that.
Urban II, 1095, a not subtle handle, Your Excellency, for €10. Thank you, Urban. Lately, I've watched a few conferences given by Bishop Sanborn in French, and I must say that both his pronunciation and his French grammar are absolutely remarkable. Greetings from Bruxelles, Belgique.
Merci beaucoup.
We are about an hour and 15 minutes into the live stream. As normal, we normally limit these to 2 hours, so we're more than halfway in, but we may end earlier today. If you have questions, make sure to put them in there. If you haven't already done so, remember to hit the like button and let us know where you are watching or listening from. Your Excellency, I would like to know the meaning of jurisdiction as related to priestly orders, and how is it fulfilled in our situation?
Well, jurisdiction means there's sacramental jurisdiction, and then there's the jurisdiction to rule. So we're here to, that's a bishop ruling his diocese or a pastor ruling his parish. See, that's jurisdiction to rule, to make rules, to make certain laws, and to dispense as well. But sacramental jurisdiction means that you have a license to give sacraments in a certain diocese or even in a certain parish. And it's like getting a driver's license, and it's not valid in another diocese. See, so that's why if a priest goes into another diocese, he has to inform the local bishop that he's there and ask for faculties. That means jurisdiction. So he can't say public mass. He can't hear confessions. He can't distribute communion. So all the sacraments require sacramental jurisdiction. Now, penance is special because it requires sacramental jurisdiction for validity, where the others do not require that for validity. See, so that's a special case. And so that's jurisdiction. What is the question after that?
How does that fulfilled in our situation?
Well, we would say that in our situation where you have an absence of authority in the Catholic Church, both the papal authority and the episcopal authority, that the rule of salus animarum suprema lex, the salvation of souls, is the supreme law. And it is the will of Christ as head of the church that we carry on the true faith and the true sacraments, true mass for the faithful, and that we are authorized to do that by what we call epikeia. That is, if the law would in any way impede the good, the law does not apply. See, so that's the basis for our operation. Ordinarily, if the bishop were there or the pope were there, you would ask for jurisdiction.
When you say those imposing these laws cannot have been acting with the formal authority of a true pope, that means those men didn't act with the authority of the Catholic Church when they promulgated the Novus Ordo. They didn't exert this authority they may have otherwise.
No, in the context, I would say that they were not true popes or true bishops. In other words, they did not have the authority to rule, and therefore their acts are invalid.
Does it not mean that these men are not vested with the authority? There's a huge distinction between agere and esse, if I remember correctly. When someone who doesn't act with the power he has, that doesn't mean he doesn't have this power at all, does he?
They don't have the power at all. They don't. The authority is a faculty. It's a moral faculty to see to the good over the community of the community over which you are placed. That's the purpose of it. It's like an arm is a faculty of your body to do sort of to pick up things, etc. So it's a moral faculty, and therefore, if you intend evil for the community over which you are placed, you cannot, by that very fact, have authority. All authority comes from God, even civil authority, the authority of the police, the authority of guards in a prison. All authority comes from God. And so that's the purpose of authority, is the common good. So the greatest of all authorities is the authority of the Pope, and second after that of the bishops to rule the church. If they intend something that is contrary to the good of the church, they do not have the authority. Think of a Navy admiral who wants to take the ship and run it up against the rocks. See, would he have the authority to be the captain of that ship? And no, they would just ignore him and just like, you're crazy, and go away, and they would take over the ship.
Well, if I might add an aviation example that His Excellency has given before, the pilot of that Germanwings plane that purposely crashed the plane.
Yes.
That was not what he had the authority.
That was not authorized by the airline, and he had no authority to do that. And so he's actually leading people into their destruction. And that's totally contrary. If he had told that to his superiors before he left, they would have taken him and probably put him in jail or something like that.
My sisters were telling me that you can have a rosary blessed by a bishop and that it releases holy souls in purgatory every time you say the rosary. Is this true?
I never heard that in my whole life.
So there's not a special Episcopal blessing for rosaries?
I never saw it. I never heard of it.
I've heard that we cannot pray for the souls of non-Catholics who are dead. Is this true?
No, you can pray for anybody, because we don't know the dispositions of their souls when they died. We don't know what God does to the dying soul, what actual graces he might give to the dying soul. We just don't know. So no prayer is ever wasted. No, you could pray for the souls of those who have died outside the church.
This is from a live stream question from last time from Matthew Arthur. It had been missed for $5. Thank you, Matthew. Was there a split in the SSPV? I've heard there was a split, and now there's an SSPV and a CSPV.
Well, the SSPV had some splits back in the 1980s and 90s, mostly early 90s, I think. And then later, because the SSPV was a very loosely organized thing, Bishop Kelly decided to make a type of religious congregation, and that's what that C is for, the congregation. And they are under stricter rules, as I understand, and so that's the difference.
Yes, I think the Superior General of the SSPV is Father Jenkins, and the CSPV is Bishop Carroll or something like that. But
yeah, I'm not sure what the hierarchy.
These are all technical things that you can find out on the internet. Michael for £5. Thank you, Michael. Do material popes truly designate bishops such that if one converted and accepted properly, he would have jurisdiction to rule over his diocese?
I would say yes. One way to explain it is that the power of designation is different from the power to rule, the power of making laws. See, the power of making laws is authority properly so called. That's how it's defined. But to designate, for example, you have the right to designate who shall be president, but you don't have the power to rule. So you don't have any, because you can designate legitimately. You don't have any power to make laws. See, so the power of designation is a faculty different from the faculty or power to make laws. So it is possible for him to have a power to designate, but not the power to rule. I would point out that the president-elect in November chooses his cabinet. He designates them, but they don't come to power until he comes to power. See, so again, we're dealing in uncharted theological territory here. But I would say if a bishop did convert to the Catholic faith, that he would receive the power to rule the diocese from Christ ultimately, because he has already been designated legitimately by a pope elect to receive power. In other words, the whole purpose of the designation is that he receive power.
Would you consider adding some articles to your website dedicated to the specific issue of an imperfect general council, including the issue of original jurisdiction or lack thereof?
Well, imperfect council is very simple. You can only have an imperfect council, and that's only speculation, by the way. There's no doctrine on it. By bishops who have dioceses. In other words, auxiliary bishops cannot have an imperfect council, or bishops without jurisdiction cannot have an imperfect council. It's just everybody would agree with that, So, what was the other question?
Including the issue of original jurisdiction or lack thereof.
I never heard of original jurisdiction. Never heard of that.
I think in relation to the imperfect general council, Your Excellency, that it would have to be held by people who originally had some jurisdiction. Maybe that's what he means by that.
I mean, it's a very, very shaky thing. And what you don't want is a doubtful pope. A doubtful pope is no pope. And, just don't try it.
Well, I don't know if you've heard, Your Excellency, the big chatter on social media is that you're the big obstacle to the imperfect general council, that they can't have it because you would cast doubt on their claimant.
I'd cast more than doubt. I mean, I don't see why they're concerned about me.
If they represent the church, they can just head for the council and have their election. You're seeing why you're the big obstacle. Why does Bishop Sanborn refer to Fatima as a private revelation when it had such a well-documented public miracle?
Well, distinguish the apparition, the miracle, and the message. Right? No one can deny the miracle. It was seen by many thousands of people. And I would say that's sufficient for asserting the truth of the apparition. But another thing is the message, and so the message is private, and that is, it's distinguished from public revelation, which stopped at the end, at the death of the last apostle. That's actually de fide. Those is anything that is revealed, even St. Margaret Mary Alacoque or any other revelations of the Sacred Heart, etc., are considered private revelations, and that is, they're not made to the whole church, and they are not considered to be used for dogma or anything like that. They're just pious beliefs, you might say. So that's the distinction. It's just a private revelation. And
there are other private revelations that have had public miracles. That having a public miracle doesn't make it public revelation.
Well, in other words, no, it has nothing to do. It just means it's not public revelation, which stopped at the death of St. John. All right, St. John the Apostle. So everything after that is private revelation, and therefore may or may not be true. So people get too attached to La Salette or other revelations. They may or may not be true. It all depends on the good memory of the person who listened to them, and her credibility or his credibility, as the case may be. Those may or may not be true. So you shouldn't get too attached to those things.
Well, as we've discussed before, people use those as the basis for their theology.
Oh, I know.
Well, there has to be a pope, because how can you consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart without a pope?
I had a priest tell me that once, after I gave him the whole explanation of why we don't have a pope.
Your Excellency, I would like to ask you about your episcopal consecration, and especially about your apostolic succession. What were your arguments that led you to accept the Took line as valid? What were the arguments that you found compelling?
Oh, you have about 3 hours. You know.
The 3-minute version, Your Excellency?
No, well, it's just that there was a lot of talk in the early, let's see, this would be mid '80s, about Archbishop Tuck and all that. So we were looking for a bishop to ordain priests in the mid '80s, and in 1985 I went down to see Bishop de Castromira, and the question he said to me, I meaning he, am not a sedevacantist, but if you're a sedevacantist, go to Gerard de Laurier. And I said, do you think that consecration is valid? He said, if it's valid for Gerard, it's valid for me. No one better than Gerard de Laurier would know whether it's valid or not. And that's a quote, because I was kind of shocked when he said it. And he was talking in French, so I understood every word. And so that's what put me on to researching it. See? So I did a great deal of research. As a matter of fact, I just did all my files recently and got them organized. I have so much evidence of it, and all, and somebody could write a book with all of the letters, et cetera, attesting to the validity of this thing. That I became convinced of it. I went over to Europe and talked to people who knew him, and who gave me sworn testimony that he was in his right mind when he did it, et cetera. Many other testimonies. The apostolic delegate Laghi said it's valid. The Bishop of Mobile, Alabama said it's valid. I have that letter in my files. Valid but illicit, as they say. But there was just overpowering evidence of its validity. The only thing that, as I said before, that Bishop Kelly would hang his hat on was the fact that one of the witnesses, two German laypersons, confused the name of the book. And sometimes I refer to the pontifical as the ritual. That was the whole thing that he said, and that he invented this idea that unless you have qualified witnesses knowing the whole ceremony and what should happen, that you can't say that is valid. He cooked that up. It just doesn't exist in canon law. All right. So that's what, it's a straw man, the whole thing. And then they got Bishop Mendez to do a ordination in 1990 where the two qualified witnesses, quote unquote, couldn't agree on what happened because something went wrong the first time around.
This was covered in a different live stream, Your Excellency, and you answered it, but we can answer it again. I've heard His Excellency refer to the SSPX bishops as Catholic. How can he say such a thing?
Because they profess the Catholic faith. I would never take that away from them. They profess the Catholic faith. They're not heretics, and I wouldn't consider them schismatics in the sense that their excommunication, as we used to say in New York, that in 15 cents will get you on the subway. I would say though that their mentality is schismatic in the sense that they think that you can carry on an apostolate in defiance of the Roman pontiff, because they see him as the Roman pontiff, and they can carry on an apostolate as if he didn't exist. That is a schismatic attitude, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that they are schismatics in that sense, because he's not a true Roman pontiff. So it doesn't matter in that sense. But they have a schismatic attitude, I'll say that.
Ironically, if they are correct, they are officially schismatic, Your Excellency. If that man is
the Pope, then they are schismatics. If the Pope says you're a schismatic, you're schismatic. He's the high court. There's no one to appeal beyond him, under him, over him. He is it.
Your Excellency, I realize the Novus Ordo is a problem. What is my duty to study more about the Church from a natural point of view, matters outside of the faith? Or is it more efficacious to spend time increasing devotional prayers? Thank you, and God bless you, the clergy and the seminarians at MHT.
It's a bit of a roundabout question. I'm not sure.
Should I spend more time increasing my prayers, or should I study what's happening, you could say, in the world around the Church? So let's say political questions, economic questions, How should I spend my time? I think
Well,
he
forget
says.
about politics and economics. It's all garbage. I would not, in other words, not oppose learning about Catholic doctrine and learning about what happened in the Catholic Church in Vatican II and praying. Those are not opposed. In other words, so I think you should inform yourself about what is Catholic doctrine. Secondly, how Vatican II has deviated from Catholic doctrine, and at the same time, pray the rosary every day. If you pray to God for enlightenment concerning the faith, you will be heard.
What is your response to well-meaning Novus Ordo conservatives that claim that there are still Eucharistic miracles happening in the Novus Ordo, and so the Vatican II Church is valid, the Vatican II religion?
Well, that would mean that the denial of the Catholic faith is true. You see, is because the general principle is that God cannot do a miracle in confirmation of falsehood. All right. So the point of departure is, the question is Vatican II continuity with Catholic doctrine or not? You see, if it is, then you could give credence to such a miracle. If it is not, then it's as bogus as we used to say, as a $3 bill. There's the question. You can't make extraordinary events the basis of your faith. Your faith is what the church teaches. You see, so you have to make that decision. Is this continuity with the past or not? If you don't make that decision, you are going to be a very, very confused person.
Someone recently said on social media, Your Excellency, it seems to be my observation that you are one of the following if you reject the thesis: too unintelligent, of bad will, or lacking in proper training. You cannot be intelligent and well-trained, but disagree. And I think my response had been, Your Excellency, that I used Father Cicada as the example, that Father Cicada was intelligent, he was of goodwill, and he was properly trained, and he understood the thesis, and he disagreed. I think that's the question is, can someone understand the thesis and disagree with it? This person is seeming to say, there's no reason to disagree with the thesis unless you, and then he gave these reasons.
First of all, the thesis is a theological position. It's not a dogma. All right. So it's an explanation of what is going on in the church. It is certainly true. All right. And it's based on much evidence. You could prove it. However, it does rely on a knowledge of the philosophy of authority. And that is something many people do not understand. And I think Father Cicada, even he did not understand it. There's a philosophy of authority. And that is that there is a material part of authority and a formal part of authority. See, there's philosophy right there. The material part is the designation to rule. The formal is the authority which comes ultimately from God in all cases, as I said recently before. So those two things are two different things, and they can be separated. See, so many people see that as some see it as a compromise. He's like a half a pope or something like that. And he's not a pope at all. Or that it's, how can, somebody who's such a screaming heretic be anything good at all? Most of the attacks on the thesis come from, I would say, emotion and gut, and it's not attacked on its principles. In other words, it's not attacked on its applying the philosophy of authority to what is going on in the church today. I've never seen it attacked on those principles. It's always mostly what I would call gut. That it's just impossible to think of these hard people as being anything in the church.
And in a sense, you understand that emotion, Your Excellency, but
yes,
that's not how.
I do. I'm not, denigrating them. I understand that. It's just that it does take a good deal, and it took me a long time to figure it out. I mean, I'm not bragging or anything. It took me a long time to figure out the thesis, and I had a prejudice against it because, again, how could you say that these people are anything at all? But you do have the problem. In other words, if you deny the thesis, you have the problem of how to explain the continuity of the Petrine lineage, that is, the lineage of St. Peter from the beginning of time to the end of the world, which is a dogma of faith. that there has to be legitimate successors of St. Peter from the beginning, from the Christ, right to the end of the world. Whatever theory you come up with regard to these Vatican II so-called popes, you have to explain that. And I have never seen anything else that explains that besides the thesis.
So going back to the original premise, you cannot be intelligent and well-trained but disagree with the thesis. Is that a true statement?
No, I think that's too broad, and I don't think I ever said that. If I did,
he's saying that's the implication, and you disagree. You disagree with that.
It's just that I wouldn't say that. There's a lot of intelligent people that you have to have a certain sensitivity to philosophy, you see, and matter and form, act and potency, and things like that come from philosophy. And if you are not well trained in that, you will have a certain reticence with regard to the thesis.
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up, Your Excellency. I have recently accepted the Institute's position on Una Cum, but I wanted to know if it has a position on Una Cum confessions or scapular blessings.
Oh, confessions.
Will I get communion policed by the Institute if I go to confession with the SSPX? Does being a Molinist and totalist ban me from Institute sacraments?
Well, let's take these one by one. The validity of SSPX confessions is a hot topic. It's disputed. All right. And I don't know which side to take, frankly. We just had a discussion on on Telegram about it. Father Cordello did a big article on it, and
I've heard that was a very good article, Your Excellency.
Oh, he's a brain. He's extraordinarily intelligent and well read and precise. Very good. I'm just out to lunch on it, as you might say. In other words, I have no opinion about it, so I can't really.
And is it because it's not an urgent issue for you, Your Excellency? Because you tend to, I think, dig in a little bit more if the issue's a bit more urgent. Because there are plenty of people in this situation where they only have an SSPX priest nearby for confession.
But usually we don't get people crossing over, so we don't have the problem too much. In other words, where somebody's going, so it just doesn't present itself too much. But one of my theory, one that would give it negativity is that it does Christ as head of the church empower in an extraordinary manner a group that wants to compromise with the Novus Ordo and bring people back to the Novus Ordo. That's their idea. That's their whole idea. And to be a side chapel of tradition within the Novus Ordo, which is the position of the Society of St. Pius X. And who mock in a sense, they pay no attention to the Pope, whom they say is the Pope, the person whom they say is the Pope. Is that the will of Christ that they function and distribute sacraments and say Mass for the people? Is that the will of Christ? Is that an authorized apostolate? That's my question.
Well, the retort is, if His Excellency can't decide, why are regular laypersons expected to know the answers?
Well, again, this is not a problem for us. In other words, that's why I haven't thought about it a great deal. But it is a highly discussed topic. I remember discussing it with Father Cicada, who felt that we're valid. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. So, but I would say don't go to SSPX.
There's a coda to your comment, Your Excellency. I think it's more a question of knowledge than intelligence. If you have all the facts, you don't need to be that intelligent to figure it out.
Well, it involves a certain abstraction, and intelligence is abstraction. They go to the idea of separating designation from the faculty to rule. Those things involve, and also you have to overcome the disgust with the Novus Ordo. In other words, to hand them the idea that they are successors of the apostles, to hand that to them makes people sick to their stomach, and I understand it. But what is more sickening is the idea that you have a church that has fallen, because if the Petrine lineage is dead, then the church is dead. See, our position is that the modernists did not abandon the structures of the church, but purposely kept them intact in order to have greater credibility in promulgating modernism. And so they're very careful about maintaining it. The Empire State Building with mice, rats, and cockroaches in it. That's my analogy. Because the building is still there, but inside it's stinking.
All right. Following up on the SSPX conversation, actually, 2 comments here. The SSPX took in priests that were ordained in the new rite and didn't conditionally reordain them. If the rite is doubtful, then are their sacraments invalid?
Yes, then their sacraments are doubtful or invalid, as the case may be. Even if they are doubtful, it would be a mortal sin to frequent them.
For a Catholic, Your Excellency, a doubtful sacrament is no sacrament?
In the practical order, it's no sacrament. You see, a doubtful means that maybe yes, maybe no. But in the practical order, to frequent a doubtful sacrament is a mortal sin.
The SSPX near me have brought in Novus Ordo clergy and won't say if they are conditionally ordained or not. They have left it at trust us.
Believe me, they are not. We know from some priests that have been in their organization.
You know from 1983.
Yes. And that was one of the issues that we would not accept such clergy, but we know that their policy is to not reordain.
Jimmy Hunjan for £5. Thank you, Jimmy. Would His Excellency one day like to have an Institute chapel in New York? The Diocese of Brooklyn must be looking to sell those empty buildings.
Well, first of all, New York. New York City is an odd place. Actually, we did have a chapel years ago when we were still the Society of St. Pius V on 6th Avenue.
In Manhattan, right?
Yes, in Manhattan. And there were about 20 people that came, I would say. But the expense, to rent a room in a it's like the room I rented in London for something like £750, and that was 2013.
Right.
That's what you're looking at. You need somebody to bankroll it because so I just don't know if it would draw. And then there's a lot of changes going on in New York City now. We have a communist mayor there. The rich people are moving out. Probably Jews will be moving out. So it's undergoing a lot of change. I just don't know. It might be a good thing to try one day. But now there's a lot of public transportation in New York. But given the condition of New York now, you can't take the subways because you could be thrown by some sort of thug onto an oncoming train as it's coming into the station. See, so you just can't take the subways, which are the main source of public transportation. So the buses are okay. And I know somebody in New York that tells me this, that you're safe on the buses, but don't get on the subways. So
I do periodically when I'm in New York and I'm taking the subway, I take a picture and I send it to His Excellency just so if I am pushed, there's final documentation right before I go. And I always wonder to think, you always say that and 15 cents will get you on the subway. Now it's $2.50 minimum, yes. I think, for a subway ride. So
yes,
lots have changed.
Well, I'm still living in the 50s. So.
Frank Ioannis for €10. Thank you, Frank. As a Novus Ordo Catholic from the Netherlands, I thought I was doing fine until I stumbled upon the logic and clarity of His Excellency. Much to contemplate.
Well, don't forget, I've been through the mill. I've been through the whole thing from 1964 when I decided that there's something Protestant about the changes in the Mass, because that's when the first reforms came through. And I studied and talked about these problems with many priests. And so I would say I know a little bit more. I've been thinking and reading and so forth. That's why and I've been teaching for many, many years. So when you teach something, you get to know it better than the students ever learn it, you see. And so I have that advantage that, and I've been talking to other priests and, so I've worked out a lot of things in my mind, So.
And Frank, in the Netherlands, you're not so very far away from Father Steenbergen and the IMBC clergy over there. So if you want to get to Mass,
do they say Mass in Holland?
They do. I think Father might say it once every couple weeks, but you
Really?
can check the IMBC website.
Yeah,
So
they're in Belgium, which is, Holland and Belgium are not too far away from each other.
Marie Catherine for $10. Thank you, Marie. Is there a book on moral theology that one can use to settle in matters of practical application for modern situations?
Yes, it's a very good handbook in English by a priest, a Capuchin, I think he was, by the name of Jone, Jone. He was German, Jona, but it was translated into English. I think it's in reprint. I think it is. And priests use it quite commonly just to look up something quickly. It's rather short. I mean, it's compact, and that's good. There was also one by Prummer, Prummer, also compact and short, quick reference. I don't know if that was ever reprinted. It might be. You'd have to look it up on the internet. But both of those are very good.
How many languages do you know, Your Excellency?
Somebody asked me that today. Well, no, that's the question. I can speak French without thinking about it, because I lived for 4 years at Econ. I had to speak French every single day and listen to it the whole day. And I read a lot of French. So I'm reading a book in French right now. And so it's just a second language for me now. So I'm fairly good in Italian, but I don't have a lot of opportunity to use Italian. But I used to teach Italian when I was teaching in the high school that we were running. So I'm fairly good. German, I'm so-so, but I read German, but I'm not great in the vocabulary. I know all the grammar. I used to teach Latin and German. And then there's a few other languages. I studied Polish when we had Polish seminarians, but then they quit, so I quit the Polish. And then I studied Russian when we had Russian seminarians, and I had to teach Latin in Russian, which I would say is one of the most difficult things I ever did. But I found Russian easier than Polish.
Which is saying something.
I never got serious about Spanish. I used to confuse it with my Italian, and I wanted to retain my Italian, so I never got serious about that. I don't think I know. Well, of course, I know Latin and Classical Greek. But you
know some Hebrew words too, Your Excellency. And
some Hebrew words. It took a year of Hebrew at Econ, but I never really took to it too much.
All right. The St. Mary's Kansas Liquor Store for $10 asks, thank you, St. Mary's. Is it permissible to plan a vacation or trip somewhere if it would not be possible to attend Mass on Sunday or Holy Day of Obligation?
Yes, as long as it's not a common thing. In other words, many, many times a year. Once or twice a year, you are permitted to go, say, on a hunting trip in Yukon or something like that and skip a Sunday. It's in the Moral Theologians that you could do that. So, I mean, if it's and also given the problem of distance, you're only obliged, according to canon law, if you are within 1 hour of travel. So that could be walking, it could be bicycling, it could be in a car, it could be in subways. If it's more than 1 hour, you are dispensed, period. So that may be true when you're traveling.
How does one get Bishop Sanborn's newsletter? Well, and it is available online for free. And if you follow Father Disposito's X account, he's very good about putting that up. But if you go to the MHT Seminary website under newsletter, you'll see it. But the way that you get the paper one is to contribute at least $100 a year to the seminary, and you will be on the mailing list and you'll receive it that way. So I think that's the better way, Your Excellency, rather than the free digital version.
Yes, digital is
for the birds.
Yes.
Teodoro Boggio for $10. Thank you, Teodoro. Hello from San Antonio. The Blessed Be God prayer book mentions the people of God in a prayer to Our Lady. Is this different from the term Montini and the modernists use?
Oh, yes. The people of God, that's an Old Testament term, and it refers to the Catholic Church in the New Testament. See, but of course, with ecumenism, where you have partial communion with everybody, the people of God became a substitute for, anybody that was a generic Christian, and because they distinguished the Church of Christ from the Catholic Church in Vatican II. And that's a heresy. See, the Church of Christ subsists in the Catholic Church. That means they're two different things. If you subsist in something else, that means you have two different things. See, and that's a heresy. So no, it's not the Montini version of people of God, but there is in the Old Testament, that reference, and it refers to the church in the New Testament. And I see that flag that says, that's the flag of the old flag of Florida, that cross, that red cross, and Florida still has it, but without those thorns on it. So that was the Spanish flag, at least that was used in their colony in Florida. So I noticed that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Patrick Martin for $10. Thank you, Patrick. As a college student, I had to read Candide, Descartes, and will be reading The Social Contract by Rousseau in my next class. Is there an exemption for students in an educational atmosphere?
Typically, there would be dispensations given for students, but I would warn you that the Candide is a filthy, dirty, disgusting work by Voltaire. Descartes, I don't think Descartes is on the index. Probably all of social contract, and most likely Rousseau is another dirty, filthy pig, and an idiot too. Besides, not that I'm against him or anything like that. Being sarcastic. No, he was a horrible man, and the social contract is full of errors, loaded with errors, and he stole that from Locke. I don't know if you know. He was not an original philosopher. He stole that from John Locke. Just so you know. Yes, typically there would be exemptions for students, yes. But again, you have to be strong enough in your faith and critical enough not to be influenced by those things.
I do think there's a couple works of Descartes on the index.
Really? Okay.
He's not an Omnia Opera person, but
right.
I think at least there's a couple works of his on there.
Right.
Teodoro Boggio, $2. Thank you, Teodoro. When a woman chooses a husband, is this designation?
No, it's. I don't want to answer that. No, it's just an election to, a choice to marry somebody. That's all.
Okay.
Designation to rule, is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
In the way it is, because he has the power from God to rule in his home. Yes, he is the head of the house, and feminism has destroyed that, and I think that's responsible for all of the confusion and of the youth, and the fact that they're messed up emotionally and mentally, as the fact that the women have revolted against their husbands in the home. The husband is the representative of the authority of God in the home.
But analogizing that back to the political order, Your Excellency, it's a selection on her part, right? She's not investing the husband with his authority. No, not at all. He already, by the fact that he's the would-be husband, has the designation from God. So when they're engaged, he's a husband-elect, Your Excellency?
He's a husband-elect, yes.
Jimmy Hunchen, £10. Thank you, Jimmy. I have an Anglo-Catholic set of the Lives of the Saints, which I discovered is on the index. I saw the subjectivist errors in it, and so my faith was not endangered. Is it a mortal sin to keep it? Well, in principle, it is a mortal sin to read what's on the index. But, there's no channel of dispensation now. You could go and get a dispensation from the local bishop. But he would ask you to have a serious reason. In this case, I don't see your serious reason, and I think you should throw it in the trash. There's your answer, Jimmy. So he couldn't put it up on eBay, Your Excellency? No, just throw it in the trash. No, you shouldn't put anything up on eBay. It's poisonous. Well, unless it's a nice chalice for His Excellency to buy, I think that would be something you could put up on eBay. Or you could just give it. Michael for £5. Thank you, Michael. Could His Excellency comment on the worst changes to the other sacraments, not the Eucharist or holy orders, and their validity? Well, I would say baptism is the most effective. Not really, their rite in their ritual is valid. See, but the way they do them very often
the way they apply the rules, so to speak, or do their baptisms, is very often doubtful or invalid. Also, the Novus Ordo approved in 1995 the idea of hair baptisms. In other words, if you see these young people getting baptized, they're just pouring it on their hair, and typically they have a lot of hair today. They're pouring it on their hair. That is considered to be doubtful by all Catholic theologians before the council. So you have a lot of doubt, at least with regard to baptism, sometimes downright invalidity with regard to baptism, which of course is extremely important. The confirmation, they authorize the use of non-olive oil for it. So that would render it doubtful. The Holy Orders, extra monks, I don't even know what they did to that, but I can't even comment. I never bothered to look at it too much.
All right. So a series of questions here from Teodoro Boggio, Your Excellency, for $10. Thank you, Teodoro. First question, how can we help traditional or Novus Ordo clergy become thesists?
Well, you have to get them to the point that they, first, that Leo and people like him cannot be true popes, because if you recognize them as true popes, you have to recognize all of the Novus Ordo magisterium and liturgy and disciplines and canon law, etc., as legitimate and good, and not as a discontinuity of Catholicism. So the first thing to ask them or to convince them of is that there is a discontinuity between pre-Vatican II Catholicism and post-Vatican II Catholicism. That's where you start. And then you get into indefectibility. If they admit that it's a defection from Catholicism, then you say, well, it is impossible that the Catholic Church, which is indefectible, give us something that is defective. And that naturally argues to the non-papacy of the people who are claiming to be papacy, that they not only are they not, they can't be. In other words, the faith dictates that they can't be. So that's and then you would go into the thesis arguments, see, but you have to get them to the point to say this person cannot be a true Roman pontiff.
Hmm. What do you think of Bishop Carroll's prayer and its mention of liberty?
Bishop Carroll's prayer. I would have to read it. I think I read it once, but I just can't. Liberty can be understood in a good sense and a bad sense. In other words, the church should have liberty to function. The Catholic Church should have liberty to function, but that doesn't mean you have liberty of religions. You see, so you'd have to see the context of it. But liberty is not a dirty word in itself. You see, it's various meanings of it, but it could be wrong. But he was, a little liberal, Carroll.
Do feelings cause conversion to schism or heresy rather than Catholicism for some?
Well, no conversion should be made on the basis of feelings. Many times schism or heresy is based on feeling, some sort of hatred for Rome, or some sort of false idea of revelation and how we come to revelation. It's Catholicism. One of the greatest qualities of Catholicism is that it's very rational. By that, I don't mean that it's just a series of philosophical conclusions, but that its ability to defend itself is very, very rational, and it appeals to reason. It does not appeal very much to emotions. So I think that if somebody goes into a search for religion with an open mind, he's going to arrive at Catholicism. Now, when he finds out that it teaches indissolubility of marriage, he might say, well, I'll be a Protestant. You see, it's like that,
Well, I found the relevant portion of the prayer, Your Excellency. I'll read it to you, and you can tell us what you think. Let the light of your divine wisdom direct the deliberations of Congress and shine forth in all the proceedings and laws framed for our rule and government, so that they may tend to the preservation of peace, the promotion of national happiness, the increase of industry, sobriety, and useful knowledge, and may perpetuate to us the blessing of equal liberty.
Blessing of equal liberty. Equal liberty. I don't know what he means by that. I don't know how to.
And again, we're only taking a clip out of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a due liberty. I mean, you don't want an oppressive government. I mean, you have fascism and socialism. There is a due liberty for, people should be able to determine where they want to live and what kind of job they want. And all of those are civil liberties. And, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually good. And the less that the government is invasive, the better. So in that sense, the more liberty, the better in that sense. But liberty can also be the liberty to do evil things, or to hold false religions, or to print pornography, or or as we saw recently in Boston, to abort your baby as it's about to be born. I mean, those are evil liberties that as Leo the 13th called it license. So did St. Augustine. So again, liberty can be understood in various ways.
We're in our final few minutes of the live stream. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button. And if you don't already subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you're watching or listening from. And if you have any late breaking questions to us, these are the last few moments to get them in. Heartland for $10. Thank you, Heartland. Asking for a friend, is it sinful to watch the series The Chosen?
I never watched it, but I have a feeling, just from seeing some clips from it, that it is a pretty poor representation of Christ and the apostles. So, I think it could give a bad impression of what Christ was, had two natures, but one person, and that person is the second person of the Blessed Trinity. So in speaking to Christ, you are speaking to a divine person. And he would have reflected that in all of his doings and sayings. His comportment, everything about him would have been supernatural and uplifting. The man that played Christ in that did not convey that at all, as far, in the few clips that I've seen from it. So,
I would agree, Your Excellency. I just don't think, and to take it all the way to your idea, which is our Lord should not be depicted in cinema except in a situation like Ben-Hur, where you're seeing someone looking at our Lord.
Yes.
So you're only seeing it, you can say, reflected. Without taking it necessarily to Bishop Sanborn's position on it, there's just, I think, a lack of dignity. I think Jonathan Rumi is the name of the actor. Mm-hmm. And there's this idea of bringing our Lord down to us, and having him be very common. And it's terrible, I think. Would you, I think the question is it sinful to watch something like that?
It could be. In other words, if I watched it, I would say this stinks. And, it wouldn't bother me, obviously, but it might bother somebody who's naive, or, might give a bad impression about our Lord. And I would say it's sinful in that way. If I were the king, I would suppress it.
I've recently discovered your channel and enjoy your interviews on YouTube. I want to know if His Excellency would like to open a church in Rhode Island. And then a further one, can you recommend anyone in South Africa? I'm in Cape Town.
We are absolutely overwrought with regard to requests for mass centers. We're saying mass in the Boston area, as you know, but I know that Rhode Island is a long way from Boston, and it's
not
north.
a million miles away. It's not a million miles away.
It's almost New Hampshire, so that's a good 90 minutes from Rhode Island, and but but if we can get more priests there, perhaps we could do something more in New England. New England has a lot of Catholics in it, and I think Rhode Island actually is the most Catholic state by percentage.
It's come a long way from the time of Roger Williams, Your Excellency.
Yes. If I'm not mistaken, but Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are very Catholic.
That's fascinating. Thank you for the Institute's consistent efforts in Australia. Recently, the faithful of Northern Victoria have been able to obtain a church building. And for many of us, this is an answer to prayers, as we've been temporarily hiring a hall for many years. Some parishioners travel 2 to 3 hours to come to Mass, and the church building gives us stability, particularly for young families looking to settle in the area for the long term. We are looking forward to Bishop Sanborn consecrating the church at the end of the year. That trip is coming.
I will bless it, but I am not consecrating it. There's a big difference between those two things.
Right. Well, we're talking hours and hours of difference, Rexy.
Yes.
But that trip is actually coming up sooner and sooner, is it not, Your Excellency? I mean,
know,
before too long, it's going to be September.
I like being in Australia, but I don't like getting there.
Getting there. You said that before.
Getting there is not half the fun, as they used to say. No, it's a long, long flight. But no, I very much enjoyed my last visit, a number of years ago in Australia. And I'm looking forward. And finally, I figured out how to pronounce the name of that town, Wangaratta. Every time Father Eldrock would say it, I got it wrong. So now I know Wangaratta.
Well, you could do as the Australians actually just you can shorten it and just call it Wang, right? They shorten everything in Australia. And that the comment that I read was from Jeremy, who had sent in a donation before the live stream. He couldn't make it. Thank you, Jeremy. It's quite early in Australia. It's not so early now. I think it's past 8 in Melbourne at the time. But he had a follow-up question. He said St. Philip Neri had quoted that it's hard to be spiritual if you are snacking. If someone offered food between meal times, would it extend to this? Or is the habit of snacking to be constantly sated in contradiction to the spiritual life?
Well, it all depends on what you're doing and what you need. In other words, some people might not be able to function properly unless they snack. They might want to eat something with coffee so it doesn't bother their stomach to keep themselves going. Don't forget, in Rome in the 16th century, people did not have the schedules and the work ethics that, say, are common today. Even today in Italy, they take a couple hours off in the afternoon. If you have to keep going the whole day, you might need some energy. And so everything is in accordance with reason. In other words, reason is the queen of everything you do. If it's in accordance with reason, it's a morally good thing to do. But just snacking for the sake of snacking and just, because I don't have anything to do, so I'll, that's wrong. It's not nothing terrible, but it's not good. It's a form of gluttony.
Steve Gerard for $5. Thank you, Steve. Sorry I'm late to the stream today. God bless you, Your Excellency, and Stephen.
Thank you,
Steve, for your donation. Thomas for $5. Thank you, Thomas. Is asking whether you like the Passion better than the Chosen, Your Excellency.
I liked certain parts of the Passion. The Sanhedrin was wonderful. I thought that scene of the Sanhedrin was done perfectly. The scourging was done perfully.
Very difficult.
And a few other parts. Some parts I thought were kind of dumb and stupid. But the little gremlins that appeared and all that. Come on. And a few other things that I thought were out of place. But the scene of the Sanhedrin was excellent.
Have you ever seen, Your Excellency, do you know Mel Gibson wanted to hammer one of the nails in to our Lord, but his watch is in the shot?
I know there was one little frame of him.
You'll see the camera moves away very quickly, but you can't miss the very first part where you see a modern watch there in it. So a little bit of it was a little too zealous, I think.
Yeah.
Jimmy Hunchen, 10 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. I recently Googled St. Kevin's in Queens and was greeted by pictures of altar girls and empty pews. Maybe if the diocese decides to sell or demolish, we could stage a Saint Nicolas de Chardonnay.
That's my old parish. We had, when I was young, I think there were 4 masses downstairs and 5 upstairs. That's a big church. It's about as big as the one that we have in Lawrence, Massachusetts. And it was a flourishing parish and school. And there were 5 priests there. The confession lines were long on Saturday. I mean, it was just pre-Vatican II was just wonderful there. And then it all blew up. All of the teachers in the school, practically all of them were nuns. And it was all blown up by Vatican II, just like a bomb. Now that's what they have.
Marie Catherine for $10. Thank you, Marie. I had to read your entire Hell library starting in grade 8 through to graduate school. I came to hate modernism.
Well, that's good. Yes. Yeah. So
Diego for £2. Thank you, Diego. Are we free to think that the Pope is not the Pope?
I would say you're free to think that Robert Prevost is not the Pope. That's the way I would put it. Yes, because he can't be unless you want to admit that Vatican II and all of its teachings and reforms are the same as Roman Catholicism.
Diego, I would encourage you to watch other videos on this channel of His Excellency talking about some of these subjects. It will help you understand some of these things. And I think our last super chat for today is from Nelson Advisors. Thank you, Peter. $20. I have 2 questions. 1, how is church hunting going in the Harrisburg area? Do you think Harrisburg could ever get a school?
Well, we had 7 people at Mass last Sunday in Harrisburg. I look many times during the week on LoopNet, and we have also a realtor in the Philadelphia area that's looking in Harrisburg for us, and she just brought up something the other day that was in York, and it was not suitable. So we're looking, but I think it has to be a small church, probably smaller than the one that we got in Pottstown. There is one in High Spire, which is just south of Harrisburg, that is for sale for too much money. We know that they paid $285,000 for it about a year or so ago, but they want something like 500 and something, 550 now and 560. But I fear it because it's too big. I mean, even on a good day, the best day, we have 20 people in Harrisburg. That cannot support a big church, all of its renovations or all of its, gas and electric and all. It just won't do it. Right now, Harrisburg is struggling. I'll say that. And so do you think Harrisburg could ever get a school? Not yet. But, we're always open to that. We have nuns. They're always growing. I'm not against it at all. I mean, I would be open to it. Would you mind explaining why coprimum can be changed? Because coprimum was simply a promulgation by Pius V of the rite of the Mass that he codified. And the only persons that he said couldn't change it were cardinals and bishops and various other. He did not bind any pope after him. It's just not in that document. As a matter of fact, he can't because of the principle that an equal does not have power against an equal. That's a general principle of law. So no, it's just a law of promulgation. And really any pope could have undone it, but he could not replace it with something Protestant, obviously. See, so, I mean, if he wanted to codify a different Mass, he could do that. It would have been imprudent because that was the way of saying Mass in Rome at that time. It would be very imprudent to change it. But legally he could, see. So, but no, it's just people, they see certain, because it says ad perpetuam re memoriam, that simply means for the perpetual memory of the thing. That means there's no expiration date on this. That's a legal term. There's no expiration date. See, that's all. It can never be changed.
We're getting some housekeeping questions here, Your Excellency. Is there any progress on the school in Massachusetts or New Hampshire?
Well, the sisters are looking for 35 students. We have 17 that are interested right now. We have somebody, you see, the 35 is to make it break even financially. We have somebody that said, if you get 25, I'll see to the rest of it financially.
He'll take care of the other 10.
Yeah, the other 10, the other ghost students. So, but I'm looking for a place, possibly. I mean, I'm thinking they used to have a school downstairs in the basement of the church, and there's actually classrooms set up down there. That's a thought. It's not the situation is kind of tight there at there's an apartment building behind the church, etc. So it's not great for a school, but I'm looking for school buildings all the time in northern Massachusetts and in New Hampshire. None has come up yet that is suitable, but we will make the move when the time is right. We absolutely want to do a school there.
And Jimmy Hungen is also chiming in with £5. Actually, the faithful of England are always on the lookout for a chapel, rectory, and school.
Yes, well, Father Naruz is very shortly getting his French visa. He went to the Consulat de France in New York, and so he should be receiving it very soon. So he should be going to France very soon, and he will help in England. They will reside in France and fly to England from Rennes or Nantes. So we're beefing up England, but we need to get a chapel. But I mean, the Church of England, I think, is selling off chapels more than like the hot dogs at a baseball game. So nobody's going to church anymore in England. So he would be good to look out for a chapel. But the question is where it should be. That's a very difficult thing to determine. They're saying Mass south of London now, also in the Reading area, and then also in the Midlands. That's the three places where Mass is being offered. Where should the rectory be? It has to be close to transportation, obviously. And I was told by Nicholas Sue, one of our seminarians, that the train goes very nicely from London to someplace to Reading. Yes, thank you very much. But the train that goes out to where they have Mass is only once per hour. So you could arrive at the Reading train station almost anytime you want, but you have to wait an hour perhaps for the train to go to the town in which they have the Mass. So it might be better to move the Mass to Reading proper. That would, be another. Now, Reading is, as far as you probably would see lower prices in the Reading area. If you get into London, I don't have to tell him. I mean, as far as, prices of everything, even the air you breathe and the water you drink is, Midlands would probably be lower priced too, as far as a chapel, but those are, it's hard for me to decide that. I think the parishioners sort of have to get together and inform the priest what they think is best.
Wait, I'm trying to close the live stream, actually, but people are slamming in
All
here.
right.
I'm really I'm going to say 5 more minutes, and then we really have to let His Excellency go. He's been going for over 2 hours now, and we have to let him get on with his day. But I appreciate the enthusiasm and the comments. Troy Thor, I was born in a Muslim family and was baptized in the church 4 years ago. Watching your live streams, I've become more drawn to sedevacantism. How can I discuss this more? Troy, I would encourage you to use the Contact Us form on the seminary website, mhtseminary.org. You can write down the particulars of your situation, and a priest will get in touch with you.
Yes.
More housekeeping. My cats, Vladimir and Svetlana, send greetings to Leo and Betty.
I will let them know. Thank you very much.
I was going to say, will the cats just receive it disdainfully, Your Excellency? And
they'll look the other way or yawn or close their eyes.
Give the look they give when you give a new toy that they're not interested in.
Yes, they're not interested.
The eye roll.
Yes.
We'll leave our last question to Luis, the young Slovak man you met in Rome, Your Excellency.
Oh, yes.
How to overcome the extremely difficult human aspects when transitioning from the Novus Ordo to traditional Catholicism.
Extremely difficult human aspects. I wish he said
I think
more.
he's talking about his family, his friends, this pressure. You're going to be a schismatic. You're leaving the church.
Do what is right and come what may. Period.
I think that's a good way for us to end the stream, Your Excellency. As always, thank you so much for your time. If you're watching this later, remember that the comments are not monitored by His Excellency or the clergy of the Institute. So feel free to leave comments. But if you have questions, please send them using the Contact Us form. That's also where you can send questions for a future live stream if you don't think you're going to be available. For example, the live stream started at 6 a.m. in Melbourne today. If you don't think you're going to be up at 6 a.m., send your questions in ahead of time, as some of the other Australians did. And remember, do the same things that you would have done if you were on the live stream. Hit the like button, comment, and that indicates to YouTube that the video has a lot of engagement, and so it pushes the video out to more people. As always, Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.